Hello, I have, out of my 40 years of inspired research in creativity and originality and genius and so on, I have three critical findings about the mind. Number one, mind is the primary engine of the human entity. If we look at the human entity as having five basic components: the body, the mind, intelligence, intellect, and the attendant spirit, mind is the most primary. In normal existential survival sustenance activities of the human being, the person, mind is the basic driving engine. Mind is formed almost during the embryonic times. Most late pregnant mothers have told me that they could even communicate with their embryo. When they intend something, the child in the womb would make certain patterned movements and so on and so forth. Mind is driven by that emotive or energy field of the body. It is a protection mechanism. It is a survival engine given to the entity by the nature process. The newborn baby, the first output is a cry, the birth cry. That is the primary expression, the first expression of the mind. As I told before, mind is a survival engine. Unless the child makes that response, the others may not know that it is alive. That energy field called mind is sensitive to the internal world as well as to the external world. Without such an engine, the entity cannot survive because no data will be detected and the entity will die. So the body feels the need for food and the mind conveys it. So in the case of an infant or a baby, it cries out. When there is a discomfort in the body, it cries out. When there is slight pain or pressure somewhere in the body, it cries out. So that operating engine is the mind. Unless it does that, the others around, the caretakers will not know that the child is in discomfort or insecure condition. So the first thing is that the mind is the primary engine and it has command on all other components of the body, of intelligence, of intellect, and remotely to the attendant spirit also. Second one is that the mind is basically analytical. Analytical meaning it can differentiate, it can discern, it can identify the type and the pattern and the nature of the signals detected. If there is a mild pain, the child cries mildly. If there is a serious discomfort, the child would cry much more loudly and for longer times. So that's what I call that analytical power. It can sense the details of the aspect which is sensed by the sense organs outside, visual, auditory, touch, taste, smell, etc., as well as the internal proprioceptive. And proprioceptive meaning that internal feelings, hunger, thirst, sexuality, and so on and so forth as the being grows up. So that natural analysis is something called as spontaneous analysis. The growing child can spontaneously differentiate who is father, the mother, the language is differentiated, the situations, the events, the things, and the phenomena around is sensed appropriately. That is because of the analytical nature of the mind. The child can differentiate, the analytical mind of the child can differentiate varied emotions on the faces of the mother or the others around. The child shows all evidences of the basic emotions of love, hate, not necessarily hate, love, affection, fear, anxiety, and so on. So all these emotions are also generated, originated, sustained, maintained, managed, driven by, and that is that aspect called the mind. There is no specific organ or a location where the mind is. Mind is all over the body. It is the energy field. The mind is an English word to name it. The third is mind is a process as well as a product almost at the same time. Whatever is the ongoing process, you stop it, and whatever is sensed, that is the product at that point of time. So these three critical spokes of the nature or of the wheel of the mind are to be clearly understood so that one can manage the mind. For example, unhappiness. That is a common theme of the current world. That is the result of analysis, spontaneous analysis also. There could be real reasons for that unhappiness, but nobody sits there to analyze it. Even before a so-called conscious analysis, there is that resultant feeling of unhappiness or anxiety or fear or threat or being humiliated or being offended, being cornered, as also being loved, being liked, being recognized, and all these things. So the context of the analytical power is mentioned in case of the negative, the displeasing, the displeasure aspect of the experience. So, in order to manage the mind, different linkages are to be chosen. Different unhappiness causing incident or event or person or situation should be looked at from a different vantage point, and consciously a different kind of analysis should be done, a creative analysis. This does not mean that one should not try anything to resolve the situation, but to manage the mind, because that feeling of worry and tension and anxiety is of no use. It is disadvantageous. It is unproductive. It might block the individual from real creative activities. So, this analysis, the analytical power is controlled not to deny the reality, but to manage the mind only, to have peace in the mind. Along with that fact should be understood that mind is a product and a process at the same time. So, when there is unhappiness or tension or anxiety, just to read a book, that means during that reading, the mind goes through that ideas in the book or a story or a good fiction, and when there is a feeling of goodness, you just stop it, and that is your product. That is the product of the mind. Anytime you stop reading, at that point of time, whatever is read, that is the product of the mind. Or if you do a creative analysis of a negative situation, which is a mental process, and the resultant product becomes a part of your mind. You have every experience, everything that is witnessed and observed are all stored in the mind, which is forming the so-called unconscious part of the mind, the larger part. Maybe the 90+% part of the mind is unconscious. All the sensed data, all the observed things and people and experiences, all the learning, all the knowing, they're all stored, stacked in the unconscious. So when your process, the mental process are changed by reading or some other activities, singing or dancing or uh, entering into creative dialogues with others, something very powerful. And at that point of time, understand that that's also gone into the process of the mind. And you are a product of that much of process. So understanding these three things, reflecting upon these three, train yourself to manage your mind, to resolve the displeasing experiences, to escape from the traps of fears and anxieties, and even to reach higher levels of tuning with the attendant spirit, and including even that product of enlightenment or satori, when that too is definitely a result of the process of mind. So manage the process of mind by understanding these three core things. Then there are methods for that, certain strategies of that I will discuss in subsequent video. Thank you for listening. Good luck.